Hello all, Old Geek here, and this video represents something of a milestone. This is the 200th video I will have posted on this channel, and by sheer coincidence there's less than a week to go until this channel's 2-year anniversary. The subject of this video was also requested by somebody in the comments to another video. So, lots of things to celebrate. Like the topic of this video is breaking down the AD&D module codes. I'm now going to run through a comprehensive list of AD&D modules, specifically first edition AD&D. There's no basic D&D in here, and there's no second edition. I've kept it strictly to first edition AD&D, and I'm grouping them alphabetically according to their codes. So, without further ado, let us begin. Naturally, we'll kick off with the A series. Now, for years I thought A was short for assault, but Wikipedia has corrected me on that. The A series is Eyrie of the Slave Lords. There were 4 modules in the original series, numbered A1 to A4, and all were mid-level with a suggested range of 4 through to 7, and all had their origins at tournament events. They were released with some added material in the supermodule A1 to 4, Scourge of the Slave Lords, but this had a revised level range of 7 through to 11. Now, in my opinion, neither level range is ideal, as I wouldn't want to put a level 4 or 5 character through this series, but equally, I don't think it would challenge levels 10 or 11 all that much unless the party was small. I would place the realistic difficulty level around 6 through to 8 for a standard size party. It does depend on how well equipped they are at the beginning. Now, this series holds a place close to many gamers' hearts, but when looked at objectively, it has issues. All 4 modules had different authors. The quality of the adventures ranged from great right down to abysmal. I'm looking at you, A3. And there were a few instances of very heavy-handed railroading. The supermodule may have added new material, but it fixed none of the problems. There was a later reissuing of the series that included Module A0, Danger at Dark Shelf Quarry, which was a pleasantly nostalgic introduction to the storyline, if a little insufficient. Now, the C definition of the next series, this was short for competition. Modules straight off the tournament tables, usually with a scoring system inside the module. These adventures were designed to test those tournament groups and thus had very little in the way of background material. Now, I found both C1 and C2 to be highly entertaining. They're traditional dungeon crawls with fun puzzles. They didn't make a lot of sense, but that wasn't their purpose. Both were designed to test the capabilities of upper middle level characters, or rather the individuals playing them. I lost faith though with the C series with C3, which I didn't like, and I've never read C4, C5 or C6. The CA series is next, and CA is short for City of Adventure. 2 modules in this series, and they were both written for the Lankmar supplement, Fritz Leiber's inspirational swords and sorcery setting. Both modules were designed for fairly high-level PCs, probably so that players could use or emulate Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. But I own neither of these modules and I cannot comment on their quality. I can comment on the quality of the next series, the CB series, CB1 and CB2. CB being Conan the Barbarian. Both of these were blatant cash grabs trying to milk the popularity of the Conan films in the 1980s. Both modules are terrible. The D series next. D is for Drow. 3 high-level adventures designed to be played after the G series in a massive campaign. D1 and D2 were combined in 1981 to create Descent into the Depths of the Earth, a module that bears one of my favourite pieces of cover art. D3, The Vault of the Drow, is a complex high-level sandbox set in and around a Drow city, and designed to lead into Q1, which I will come to later. Now, this entire series was given the supermodule treatment in 1986 as GDQ 1 to 7, which is unarguably the best of the supermodules because that most of the original source material was so strong. From the D series, we move on to the DL series, Dragonlance. Now, if the Conan modules were a quick cash grab, the DL series raided the bank vaults over and over and over again. 16 modules, some of them traditional adventures, some source books and some collections of shorter scenarios, but all of them contributed to the decline in faith that gamers of the 1980s had in TSR to produce good modules. Some of these were inspired by Dragonlance novels, and other modules were based on Dragonlance novels. But all of them told somebody else's story, and that was the main problem with them. The DQ series, very short series, slots in now with DQ1, the only one in the series, the Shattered Statue. Now, this is an oddity that could be played with both AD&D and the Dragon Quest game. And that's all I know about it. I needed Wikipedia again to tell me what the code EX was short for, as in EX1 and EX2. And it's the Extension series. This is a pair of modules that were designed to be played together, both of which are set in Wonderland. Yes, that Wonderland from Lewis Carroll's famous novels. The modules are bizarre, they are fantastical, they are magical, and they are utterly deadly. These two high-level modules will not appeal to everyone, but at least their main focus was on fun, pure fun, and frustration, and slaughter. Next series alphabetically, the G series, needs little by way of introduction. Even 12-year-old me realised instantly that G was short for Giants, and the 1981 reissue of G1 through to 3, entitled Against the Giants, was one of the earliest modules I owned. The modules were available individually beforehand, but G1 to 3, that compilation, is just utterly awe-inspiring. Many played them as a high-level hackfest, as did we as teenagers, but that sells the series short. They're far more than that. They do pack a punch, but all three reward clever play, and Gygax's usual rulebook verbosity is absent in the way they're written. They are put together in such a style that allows the DMs to flourish and make the modules their own. They're absolutely wonderful. Later in the 80s, we got the H series, 4 linked modules set around Bloodstone in the Forgotten Realms. Now, I believe the H was short for high level, as H1 was for an average character level of around 15, and H's 2, 3 and 4 went higher still. I think H4 was for levels 18 to 100, something ridiculous like that. But the later modules in the series, for me, jumped the shark, typified the clunkiness of extremely high-level play. But H1 was okay. It was designed to use the battle system box set, and it focused on diplomacy, raising armies and mass battles, and thus offered something different. The I series was a very large series which perpetuated throughout the 1980s, and I was short for intermediate, that mid-level of play, so called. It's sort of that perfect spot for AD&D, where characters come into their own, but they're not too powerful to feel too superheroic, but they're more capable than low-level characters, sort of level 5, level 6, level 7, that sweet spot. And in fact, the modules in this series had official ranges supporting characters from level 4 all the way up to level 10. So most could be played with that 5, 6, 7 ideal range. With the exception of 1988's compilation Swords of the Iron Legion, which covered all character levels, but which was forgettable. The I series began fairly strongly and contains several iconic adventures. I1, Dwellers of the Forbidden City, is a strong sandbox. I3 and I4 contain classic dungeon crawling in an evocative desert setting, and I6 Ravenloft is one of the best known adventures of all time, a groundbreaking introduction to gothic horror and an intelligent adversary to go up against. But in between, the other modules bounced all over the place in terms of quality. The super module I3 to 5, The Desert of Desolation, for me typifies this. It's a massive campaign combining the original I3, 4 and 5 modules and adding in extra material, some of which was good, some of which was poor. And it included the fabulous I3 and I4 in their entirety, but it fixed none of the issues that I5 had. I12 was also a compilation and also a little bit uneven. It was called Egg of the Phoenix, and it contained reworked RPGA scenarios, which I will mention later. Moving on now to the L series, which was the work of Len Lakofka, and centred on his Lendor Isles campaign setting, and the L was for Lendor Isles. This was his own little corner of the Greyhawk world. Initially, we got two interesting modules. The pure low-level sandbox that was L1, Secret of Bone Hill, and the ambitious investigation scenario that was L2, The Assassin's Knot. Neither were perfect, but both were worthy additions to anyone's collection. There were sporadic later releases to the series available in special edition sets and as PDF downloads, but I think only those first two, L1 and L2, were really sort of Len Lakofka's high point. MV1. This was an oddity, with MV being Magic Viewer. The module entitled Midnight on Dagger Alley was the only one in the MV series. It was a solo adventure designed to be played without a dungeon master. It used a transparent red strip to reveal obscured text on the pages. Now, I've not played it, but I do know it was very short, and the reviews I've read say that it was mediocre at best. We come to the N series. If ever there was a series that failed to define its identity, it's this one. N was for novice. Novice DMs, novice players. And yet, N1, Against the Cult of the Reptile God, the first module in the series, was a challenging and involving scenario with many moving parts. Yes, it was fantastic. It's one of the most satisfying modules to both play and run. But novice, it was not. And that was followed by N2, The Forest Oracle. And you all know my opinion on that one. If you don't, check out my video on the worst AD&D module ever. Now N3, I don't know much about it, but I do know it had an unfortunate typo on its cover regarding its suggested level range. N4 was the first true novice adventure and was decent. That was Treasure Hunt. But it probably came a little too late to revive the series. And N5, the last one in the series, was an odd collection of Forgotten Realms scenarios, which started off quite well, but which went a bit crazy towards the end. So the N series was all over the place. Moving on now to the OA series, I'll cover these very quickly. It was a collection of 7 modules for the Oriental Adventures campaign, and being in the late 80s, this series did roll over into 2nd edition AD&D. I've never read any of them, so I can't comment on their quality. And I'll move on. Because the same goes to OP1. The only module in the Outer Planes series. And this was a collection of adventures designed to be used with the Manual of the Planes book. And I didn't have OP1 either. So let's move on. Q1 is next. Now Q, short for Queen. The Queen being Lolth, the demon queen of spiders. The finale, the last module in the epic GDQ series. It was designed to close the brutal and wonderful Giants and Drow modules. Such an epic sequence of adventures. But Q1 was not the finale that this series deserved. It had a change of author, a change of tone, and it was a mess of ideas. A big disappointment. The R series never saw full publication in their original form, and I'll combine this bit with the RPGA modules as well, because some of those were AD&D, most were for basic. And all of these modules were only available through the RPGA, the Role Playing Game Association. The earliest R series modules would later be reworked and made into I-12, Egg of the Phoenix, but in their original form, these adventures are now collector's items. And if anyone locates a copy of R8, Yogg's Dessert, I would of course be very interested. They named a module after me. About 40 years before I acquired that name, but still, there's a module named after me. Anyway, moving on. RS1, Red Sonja Unconquered. The last of the Conan tie-ins. Thankfully. As with the R series, this one can be quite expensive. But that's because nobody bought it. It was appalling. The S series is next. S for Special. 4 of the most recognisable modules of all time. Why special? Well, I don't know for sure, but let's see. Let's start with S1. Tomb of Horrors. S2. White Plume Mountain. Wacky Funhouse Extravaganza. The memories packed into this short module booklet. S3. Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Spaceships. Robots. Lasers. Get your sci-fi out of my medieval fantasy. S4. Lost Caverns of Sojkanth. A bit more normal than the others in this series, but it was a daddy of a dungeon crawl, and you got a luscious extra booklet packed with new monsters, spells, and magic stuff. So yes, it was a special series. The T series, or the series that never was. T1, The Village of Hamlet. AD&D's Keep on the Borderlands, but better in my opinion. But the T was short for Temple of Elemental Evil. And we'd never see parts 2, 3 and 4. There was no T2, no T3, no T4, until the T1 to 4 super module was put out 6 years after T1. T1 to 4 was a cumbersome and convoluted behemoth of a dungeon crawl. Some people love it. And yes, in the hands of a DM who is willing to invest every waking hour into dissecting and deciphering it, I would imagine it can be superb. But I have neither the time nor the patience. The U series. U for Underwater. You all know my opinion of U1, The Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. The best TSR module produced for first edition AD&D. This is a varied and entertaining series which presented a new challenge when compared with the other modules available in the early 1980s. The series was written by the British TSR team and demonstrated a more down-to-earth form of fantasy, with a focus on believable environments, logical creature lairs, and a high attention to detail. Yes, U2 didn't really work in practice, but the series as a whole is a very solid one. The plot is good, the environments are great. And the British team would then give us the UK series. UK for United Kingdom. Haha, a bit of flag waving from me. And here they continued with their own style. The adventures all attempted something different, something that would make them stand out. They didn't always quite hit the mark, and they didn't really get the exposure they deserved outside the UK. And not every module would suit every group's tastes. But there are several true gems in this particular series, particularly UK3, The Gauntlet, and UK4, When a Star Falls. Now, one aspect of the UK series that really stood out was the author's willingness to incorporate rules from the DMG that were often overlooked, such as sages and intoxication. UK3 has got drunken gnolls. What's not to like about that? And they also promoted the skills of different character classes. It wasn't a case of shoehorning an unusual character class into an adventure, as somehow why would druids go into dungeons? And it's some of the classes didn't always fit every setting and every scenario, but the UK team here produced scenarios that were designed for these classes. A druid would delight in the environment provided by UK1 Beyond the Crystal Cave, and both the druid and the ranger would be right at home in UK5 Eye of the Serpent. So it did help bring these other classes to the fore and made use of some of their lesser used abilities. We do end this video with a series that never really got going, and that's the WG modules, WG being World of Greyhawk. The series here started with WG4. The modules that were intended to fill the first 3 slots were placed in other series. I believe Village of Homlet was one of them, and Lost Caverns of Sojkanth was another one. They were given other designations, other module codes. So when the WG series did appear with WG4, it began with the Forgotten Temple of Tharisden, which itself was designed to be a sequel of sorts to S4. But despite not really knowing where it sits, WG4 was a very good module though. There were 3 more modules in the series for 1st edition, as the later part of this series did roll into 2nd edition AD&D. WG5 and WG6 were fine, nothing special, but they weren't bad. They were decent adventures. But WG7, Castle Greyhawk, was a poor attempt at satire, and is rightfully derided as being one of 1st edition's lowest points. So all in all, this has been a fairly long list, a fairly long video. I do hope you have enjoyed this extensive romp through the late 1970s and 1980s. And isn't nostalgia such a wonderful thing? I've been the Old Geek, and this has been my 200th YouTube video. If you've not already done so, do please give me a like and a subscribe. Come and chat on my live streams. I have 2 per week most weeks. Or come to my Discord, you're more than welcome. We've also got games there for you to join as well if you fancy playing a few games with us online. But for now, see ya.